Ladies and gentlemen, this is David Mirikitani with another episode of Weighing In. We are brought to you by USA Wrestling, the national governing body for wrestling in the United States, joined by Grant Turner, Mark Ostrander. It is a significant, monumental, historic time for wrestling, gentlemen. NCAA has approved women's wrestling as a sport that can have a national championship, a season, everything that goes along with that. We were talking about this off air. There's obviously a lot of questions about when exactly national tournaments will start, how many teams will now pick up the sport at a varsity level. But Mark is the oldest and wisest of us. Something probably when you were wrestling back in high school and college, this is something you probably never could have anticipated.
Yeah, I mean, you would always hear about it was basically little kid tournaments where girls were wanting to wrestle against boys, and some of the boys didn't want to wrestle them, and you kind of chuckle at it. But yeah, it's real now, and I'm surprised that more Division I schools have not picked up women's wrestling, but I think they were maybe waiting for it to get sanctioned. But it's now sanctioned by the NCAA, so I would imagine there's going to be a lot more jumping on board. See what happens.
GT, you work with athletes of both genders, obviously. What are your thoughts on this? I mean, Grandview obviously has a men's and women's program as well. I think your women just took second at the national duels. Your men took first. Both of you guys are in a state, frankly, where wrestling is a lot more important than it is in my state. Your perspective on all this?
I just think that it's a great step forward for women's athletics. I hope that, with this growth and national championship status being the 91st for the NCAA, that it just continues to grow and that wrestling grows with it into different places in different parts of the country that maybe not have collegiate wrestling opportunities, but continue to grow the opportunities for both men's and women's wrestling. I think with women's wrestling, it's going to be an amazing step forward for the Division I athletics and power conferences to continue to add, as it is a sanctioned NCAA championship sport. So I'm looking forward to the growth opportunities for, some of these schools to kind of figure out how they're going to navigate adding sports to their collegiate offering in, a very difficult time in college athletics. And I hope that athletic directors and, staff and boosters can kind of step up to help that growth. Definitely at the Power 5 conferences.
Yeah, I think we look back on it, and for a long time, wrestling was being able to be isolated in Title IX revisions, things like that, and or reductions, excuse me. So now that there's a female equivalent all the way up, I think that's significant. And this feels like it's a bottom-up growth, guys. Like girls wrestling is the fastest growing sport in high school. And we make the difference between girls and women at the various age levels, but female wrestling in high school is gigantic. It's growing so fast. And I teased you guys about it, like Missouri sanctioned girls wrestling before Iowa, which was kind of shocking at the high school level. But it's so significant. The numbers are significant. The amount of people attending is significant. Oklahoma State had exhibition matches between their club and Ottawa University during their duel with West Virginia. So some ladies got to wrestle on the raised stage in Gallagher. That is significant. And we say this a lot, but I think it bears repeating. The lessons that all of us have learned, and many of the people watching and listening have learned from wrestling, are not gender specific. Winning and losing with grace and humility, accountability, working hard, being a good teammate, discipline, 100 other positive attributes from our sport should not be set aside for only men or only boys. And so the fact that it isn't at another level is great. It's fantastic. But it feels to me like it's a swell from the bottom, that as these schools have added girls wrestling, that colleges are starting to see, okay, if we create supply. If we create a program, there's demand for it. We can fill the rosters. And especially like at junior colleges, Mark, and at NAI schools, Grant, where enrollment-driven numbers matter, it's really positive, and it helps balance out your student body, and it helps balance out your athletic student body, the ratios and the percentages. So there's obviously still some ambiguity here, guys, but we certainly wanted to talk about just overall that this is an important landmark. 91st sport, as GT said. Always count on him to have the facts absolutely on point on that. And I think we could talk about it for an hour and it wouldn't be significant enough. Like, like a Tricia Saunders is probably happily crying to herself. Like, those women that were the pioneers of the sport. I mean, I remember interviewing Art Martori, and he said he and Tricia Saunders were making up weight classes in the bleachers at a tournament for women. And to go from that to this, and a guy like Art Martori deserves a ton of credit, and Andy Barth deserves a ton of credit for helping literally sponsor athletes for years and years, but female athletes, women athletes. And I don't think we can underestimate the impact of the women's Olympic team this year or like a Helen Maroulis probably is better. We'll see the impact of this year, because it was so recent, but like when a Helen Maroulis does what she does, when Mensa Stock does what she does, you watch stuff on TV and you're like, I want to do that. I can do that. And for girls to have role models of the same gender at the highest level in the Olympic finals is absolutely massive. So
I think it's good. I got a video sent to me 2 days ago from my niece who was in 7th grade. She started wrestling because 2 of her best friends went out for wrestling, so she thought she'd try it. And she had her first meet, never wrestled before, and she gets on top of this girl and does a cross-face cradle and puts her to her back. And my wife is watching the video with me, knows nothing about wrestling. She goes, how does she learn that stuff? And I go, you can learn things real quick, but you usually don't put it together real quick. It takes you a while to do that. So, I mean, yeah, and they look like they're having fun, and that's the most important part. These girls are having fun. They're learning what dedication is, like you said, David, competitiveness, having to put the work in to get the results. And I think we're missing that in a lot of the way our, culture is these days. You got to put hard work in to get results. So I think it's great for the sport. It's great for the kids. It really is.
Yeah, there's a woman here in St. Louis who I'm friends with, and she called me because her daughter started wrestling and she's quit volleyball. And, she goes, how do you think she's going to do? And I'm like, well, I don't know. I don't know how athletic she is or anything else. But I told her, I was like, losing in wrestling is a lot harder than losing in volleyball. You can't blame anybody else. And generally you got your face smashed in at some point. Yep. And that family has fallen in love with the sport. I mean, I think she's like a 500 wrestler, but she's on the varsity and she's wrestling. And the mom said it's done wonders for her self-confidence. It's done wonders for her being even more accountable in other areas of her life. And she didn't want to keep playing volleyball because the other girls didn't want to win as much as she did. And I said, well, in wrestling, you don't have that problem. There's going to be kids on the team that don't want to win as much as you, but that'll affect the team score, but it won't affect your score.
Yeah.
And so absolutely, and there's a bunch of little micro stories like that we could tell, but it's awesome. There's no real natural pivot to this, but there's a lot of conversation going on about the national duels. And normally I'm a let's figure it out guy, but I'm just going to get my 2 cents worth in. I actually worked with guys on trying to do this. It's almost impossible. I mean, I get that first semester makes more sense, or beginning of the year versus end of the year if it became a 1-semester sport at the beginning instead of the end. If you go to the end, the NCAA does not want to have 2 national championships. The only one they do is indoor and outdoor track, because you could argue they're separate literally different events. I mean, I don't know if the long jump is any different inside than outside, but like the track is smaller in the other events and they run a 60-meter dash instead of 100, stuff like that. But the economics of this are so difficult for people to understand. Like, there's really 3 duels in college wrestling that everybody would get fired up for or does. Penn State, Iowa, Oklahoma State, and Oklahoma State, Penn State if they chose to wrestle. And they have wrestled before. They don't wrestle annually. The rest of them do well depending on that crowd base, but the one that gets national attention. So those teams are the ones really driving. They're the horse in the cart. So you have to get those teams in. And I talked to teams that weren't them, and the demands they have to come to a meet is crazy. And the other thing that people have to understand is the Penn State Iowa meet, I think conservatively makes $600,000, $700,000. You just look at ticket sales and you look at parking and you look at concessions, you don't have to be a math whiz to figure it out. And those schools are earning that every other year, even years, odd years on who's hosting it. You're now going to take that, and I'm probably on the low side. Like, I don't know what skyboxes sell for and stuff like that. And, it's kind of like NCAA tickets. Maybe you have to donate so much to get the good tickets. I've heard crazy stories about what tickets cost for both of those in both of those venues. If you split the difference and say you're averaging $300,000 a year on the low side from that meet, why would you wrestle it for free? Because it doesn't have the same juice in January if you just wrestled it in November. Like, that's reality. Like, and to compare it to something like the NCAA football championship just ended last night. Ohio State beat Notre Dame, but Ohio State played Oregon in the first round, and it was a rematch. But they're in the same conference now, which is odd. And the rematch is part of the NCAA tournament. And like, Penn State and Iowa do not have a ton of dates on their schedule anyway. They don't believe in this is not like, Mark, when you and I were coaching or wrestling where like 40, 50 matches in a year was the norm. In GT, I'm guessing Grandview, you guys are anytime, anywhere, any place, but I don't think a lot of your kids are getting 40 matches in a year. It's maybe 25 or 30. You'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in general, that's probably more accurate. Obviously injuries and lineups and stuff like that, but I think we'd all like to see it. I think people understand that it's easier to explain to a new person who's winning or losing in a dual meet, way easier than like the national tournament, or if you're sitting there on Friday morning and a guy wins in the quarterfinals and it's like, well, he gets 1 for advancing, he gets 6 for 6th place points, even though we haven't wrestled the semis yet, and then major tech 10 points. I understand the simplicity is important, but somebody's going to have to throw a truckload of money at these teams. And it's basically going to have to have money where it's very difficult to get your ROI, to get your money back. Like, if you picked Dolomer or Resolite as a company and like, okay, we're going to do the meet on our mats. Well, and the other thing is, when you pay these teams, is it 8 teams? Is it 16 teams? Who hosts it? And another thing that's massively underrated as a problem, like I heard a coach say, well, you just pick the teams that are predicted to do the best. Well, like if we took 15th last year at Mirikitani University and 16 teams, I won in. But if my whole team graduated, so do you do it based on how you placed? Do you do it based on returning points? How do red shirts come into account? How do injured guys come into account? It's not just picking a date. It's not just clearing out your schedule. And even if you did it like 4 pods of 4 and the top 4 teams hosted 2 duels and then they go to the highest ranked team. Again, rankings are subjective. And now whoever's doing the rankings, it feels like, and Mark, you and I did them. Like, okay, well, hey, and this never happened once where a guy said, well, you bumped my guy up, because rankings didn't really matter. they kind of matter and they influence the coaches' vote because a lot of coaches just look at the rankings. But if it determines on who's going to host a meet and get 10,000 fans, people are going to get calls at these various ranking institutions. So normally I don't go on for a subject without including you guys, but I did, and I apologize. But either one of your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'm kind of like what we've always talked in the past. Unless you have a solution, and I don't have one, so I don't know how you set it up. I don't know when you do it. I don't know how it will work. Somebody's going to always be left out, just like football. But duels are fun to watch. They really are. And in the past, we had it at you and I, Grant, I think for 4 or 5 years, and they brought in Division I, Division II, NAIA, junior college. They had everybody there. And it was fun to be able to watch some of these duels, and you're right there on the mat. So that was cool for the coaches of the smaller schools like David, us, and maybe NAIA at that time was not quite as prevalent as it is now, that Grandview has absolutely destroyed the sport by winning it so easily every year. Thanks to Grant and his coaching staff. But
there's a compliment in there somewhere, DT.
There's a big compliment. I watched them on TV the other night. Iowa Public Broadcasting for the first time, and I don't know how many years carried wrestling. Again, they're doing 5 events, and it was Grandview and Kearney, and it was so much fun just to watch because it's old school. It's old school watching wrestling, and that's kind of how we grew up. So how you do this, I don't know. Do we need it as a sport? I think we do. I think it brings more fans into it because they understand the team concept. They don't understand the individual weights having a place. They don't get that as easy as they do our team beat your team. So I think we need it as a sport. I just don't know how you're going to set it up because of all the reasons you gave earlier, David.
I'm going to say something in GT. I want your thoughts. In tournament, your best guys decide it or best women decide it, and duels, your worst people decide it. And as somebody that runs dual meet tournaments, you see it like, hey, if I can just – Grant's better than me, but if I can only lose by 7, that matters. And you see a lot more pins and bonus stuff at nationals because at nationals, I'm trying to win the match. In the duel, I'm trying not to get killed. Anyway, GT, go ahead.
Well, I think I even saw something on, like, Kale gave his kind of 2 cents on it, and I've seen David come out and talk about it, and I heard Schwabe talk about the one that was just at the multi-division national duels, where it was all these type of things. Now, I think the other thing that we could do, and once again, I think that the national duel thing that's going to be happening in Tulsa, like this invitational thing that Okie State's kind of putting together, is like in the early part of November, which is like, it's an invitational. So like, I think that the model that we could have for duels is very similar to like kind of that preseason basketball model where it's like, oh, this is the Maui invite, or this is the whatever, the Disney invite, and all these other different things, but it's a rotating schedule. So like, you get invited to these things. Now, once again, you can choose or not to be participating in such events, right? So I think, once again, you got to remember that there's costs involved to taking your team everywhere to do all these different dual meet things. It's a lot. But I think, to your guys' point also, is that the NCAA is going to have the traditional national tournament, which is, in all honesty, I think one of the best wrestling tournaments on the planet.
Yeah.
Like, regardless of like freestyle, folk style, youth, whatever, the NCAA Wrestling Championships is a marquee event. And we've been doing a very good job of like promoting it. Everybody gets behind it. We've had sellout crowds. I mean, legitimately, we're going to be in a football stadium in 2028. So there's a lot of momentum that can kind of push us to a humongous audience. And I think that if we have a dual meet, I don't know if we get the exact same attention we would have to build that as well. And I just don't know if that's something that the wrestling community like really wants to do, even though duels are fun, they're important. It is really cool to see team versus team. But I just think that the invitational national duels, you're going to look at it just like how we're looking at it on the high school scene, where it's like we have Super 32s, we have Fargo, we have Beast of the East, we have all of these different humongous invites, but they're all individual based. And we just need to have, we don't have it like junior duels or cadet duels where you're kind of forced to go all to one area. I just don't know if the collegiate game will ever get there.
Well, there's literally breaking news. Somebody sent me a text. The National Duels Invitational, sponsored by Paycom, will welcome some of the top collegiate talent to BOK Center in Tulsa, Oklahoma, November 15-16. Hosting the National Duels by our fantastic sponsor, Paycom, is a game changer for D1 wrestling. Due to the unprecedented challenges in D1 athletics, it's more imperative than ever to have more big moments in intercollegiate wrestling so we can grow our fan base and membership, said Mike Moyer. The 16-team event will have some of the nation's top teams. Total purse of more than $1 million up for grabs. The top 8 teams will earn payouts: $200 for first, second and third $150, fourth $75. 5th through 8 will get 50, 40, 30, 20. All the participating teams will receive $20 for attending. Ticket details, full rosters will be announced on or before July 15th. I'm excited for the sport of wrestling to have a competitive field at the inaugural National Duels Invitational, said Chad Richardson, Paycom's founder and CEO. Investing in student athletes and non-income generating sports is important in today's ever-evolving collegiate landscape. Oklahoma State will serve as the host school. Bringing a prestigious wrestling tournament of this magnitude to Oklahoma is exciting for the sport, and the winning will be significant to help universities build their programs at an even higher level. We are grateful to Mr. Richardson and Paycom's support of wrestling in the state of Oklahoma nationally. The event will be held at BOK. There's a quote from the BOK vice president. Okay, so this is exactly what we talked about. Somebody just has to have money that doesn't really care if there's a lot of ROI. And this guy is awesome for wrestling. He's the one that got David Taylor. We should also mention Joel Kester is the Tulsa sports commissioner. That guy loves wrestling probably as much as anybody when it's in terms of bringing events to his city and being creative and looking at tax dollars and other things that help the area. So, he's obviously bid on and successfully got nationals. He helped us with Oklahoma Border Brawl. He was successful in keeping junior duels in Tulsa for years. So it's interesting. I also think this, and this is my opinion, this is not a fact, I don't think Kale would go to anything that was David Taylor's idea. I just think that he's not following. And the national duels need Penn State more than Penn State needs the national duels. $200,000 for winning and $20,000 for traveling is massive to a lot of programs, but I don't think it means that much to Penn State. Again, that's just conjecture. I'll be interested to see if Iowa goes, because I know when we talked to him, that wasn't the price. So
let me phrase it like this, David. I kind of agree with you, but I also think that Kale, Tom and Terry Brands know that maybe we need this, and this may be our best alternative right now. So they may show up for it and see how the first year or so goes, because I think it's important to grow the sport of wrestling to have an event like this.
When you say we need it, I assume you're talking about the NCAA collectively and wrestling in a bigger picture.
I think wrestling in a bigger picture, not the NCAA.
Yeah, and
I care less about the NCAA.
I would say this: Penn State's paying Kale to win nationals. And Kale's going to do what he thinks it's best to win nationals. Same thing with Tom Brands. And there's a handful of teams that realistically can win nationals every year, and that handful's been very, very small the last 5 or 6 years. Normally it's, hey, if Grant's team wrestles great, they can win it. If David's team wrestles great, they can win it. Mark's team's the favorite, but they got a couple guys, if they fall, Grant and Mark's and David's team could win it. It hasn't been that way for a long time. Last year we were betting on whether Penn State was going to win by 100 points or not. This year we're talking about if Penn State's team is better. So if you're that far ahead, you don't need to go. And Penn State also is notorious for not having a lot of real hard matches early. You go to the national duels, you don't control that. Like when they go to those collegiate duels and they work with Papalizio, they pick who they're going to wrestle and they pick who they're not going to wrestle. All those teams do that. Some teams just have more juice in that conversation than others. Some teams like, this is who we're wrestling, and they go, okay. And some teams like, well, this is who you're wrestling, and if you don't want to come, we'll find somebody as good as you to replace you. So we'll see, right? One of us is going to be right or wrong. And I would just say this, if somehow Penn State or Iowa ends up there, they got more than 20,000 to show up. I can promise you that. So, okay, lots of other stuff to talk about. GT was helping me with my French, the Henri Deglane. Henri
Deglane.
Henri Deglane. USA killed everybody. Bunch of gold medals, 1 or 2 silvers. Spencer, 5 matches, I think, 4 matches. Didn't 5, all 10-0 techs or 10 rip, as GT says. I think for him it was probably just getting on the mat and traveling and that other stuff. So it's super positive. Obviously great for USA Wrestling. Let's see what else. A couple of just tidbits we won't talk a lot about. Anthony Ferrari has transferred and is immediately eligible at Long Island University. Aaron Stewart, 2-sport athlete, committed to Illinois. Mizzou has another injury with Colton Hawks. And if you look at Mizzou's lineup, I think they're starting 1 or 2 guys that they thought was going to be in their starting lineup at the beginning of the year. It's kind of crazy. Like, Certain got hurt. Moore's wrestling. Joffrey's Edmonds wrestling. Joffrey got hurt. You go up, Keegan's out right now. Hawks is out right now. Elam's out right now. Nitzel's out right now. Basically, 60 Steed's wrestling, but like 74 on up. I mean, it's brutal for them. Like, I don't know if they need to stop playing kickball. I'm saying that sort of tongue in cheek, but like, no team in the country, you can take 7, 8 starters out and be competitive. And I mean, like, they beat Utah Valley, but it was super close. And I think they won the first 5 and lost the second 5. A buddy of mine is transferred in at the semester who is a backup in another Division I school, so they don't have to pull Nitzel's red shirt. You'll see that soon enough. I think they're trying to save Sinclair's red shirt. They have great recruits in the pipeline. And they have some kids that are doing really well as youngsters. Like Gage Walker's done really well as a true freshman, in my opinion. But, Mizzou's a team that's, if they took 11th, people were mad in Missouri. Perennial top 10 team. And maybe they didn't wrestle up to their seeds every year, but, perennial top 10. And they haven't really portaled. They haven't really gotten anybody out of the portal I can think of any massive significance. So kind of doing it the traditional way. So it's just kind of brutal. I don't know if anybody wants to comment on that, but then the other sort of major news is Crookham. Some sources are saying he's out for the year. There was a source that said he was out for a year. Another source that said he'll be back in time for the conference. Another source came out after that and said he's out for the year. And then Scotty Sentis at Campbell said, Ty GT Gadiali. Am I pronouncing that right? Okay, 1 for 2. All right. With the one with more syllables and vowels, I got right. So there's that. He's out for the year. And so we were saying how heavyweight empties out. Well, if Gadiali comes back, if Bastida comes back, then you add the Feldmans, the Keters, etc. That weight still clears a lot of good guys out, but there's going to be more depth there than originally we thought. So I don't know if we want to talk a lot about injuries. I don't know how much that matters. Let's talk a little bit about the duels that happened this last weekend. Sort of the big ones were Illinois at Iowa, Penn State at Nebraska, Michigan at Minnesota. Mark, I don't know what you got to watch this last weekend. Thoughts or comments on any of those matches?
Yeah, I got to watch Illinois and Iowa, and I got to watch Penn State and Nebraska. Two completely different types of duels. I thought Iowa wrestled pretty well, but it didn't seem like Illinois came and wrestled the way they had wrestled all year long. I don't know how much of that is when you step out against a guy from Iowa in their own arena. The old Carvered saying, I got carvered, because their kids weren't taking shots. They got one takedown. David,
You were
takedown.
taking my, that was going to be my, yeah.
That's, I mean, and the thing is, they didn't shoot. So I'm not sure what was going on. Webster at 49 didn't take a legitimate shot. Now, I'm not saying
people understand that match real quick. 0-0. Webster lets Parco go, like Parco picks down, lets him go, and then Webster picks neutral. So he knows going into the match he's losing 1-0. Go ahead.
And no shots. Did not take a legitimate shot. Couple fakes here and there. Lugo just kept underhooking him, walking him off the mat. There could have been a lot more stalling called during that time. And then the last 15, 20 seconds, Parco just kind of, kept movement going. Didn't really do anything either. So it's kind of a boring match. Ayala, same way. It was kind of a boring match till the third period where Drake was able to get in and finish a nice high crotch into a double leg and scored his 3 points and won 4-2, 2 against 3. So that was a great match. But Caliendo just impresses me more and more every time I watch him. He beat Skoll. Is it Skoll?
Scholes, Brandon Scholes.
Who's a legit kid, had some good wins this year, and he ended up with the tech. So that was impressive. Buchanan 97 was impressive because I think a lot of people thought, Brownigold, they saved him for a year. Brownigold had beaten Warner 2 years before that in a duel. They thought Brownigold was going to be, maybe make a run at the national title, and he got majored by Buchanan. So I don't think that's going to happen. Illinois is not quite the team I thought they were going to be. But when you only get one takedown in a duel, what do you expect?
Yeah, let's get GT in here about this one, especially GT, your thoughts on 84 with Arnold and Ruth, but anything else you want to get to?
Well, I think, once again, this is Big Ten competition. These are tough duels. You're into your heart of your season. To Mark's point, like you're not gonna win very many matches by having zero offense. I think Iowa is a very stingy wrestling team. They're very tough to take down. It's hard to. And I think in those matches that are tough, like Webster or Ayala, Ayala versus Bird, could be a semifinal or a final match, at the NCAA tournament. It's going to be kind of a cat and mouse game between those guys. I think also with Parco and Webster, I can see the strategy trying to be like 0-0, take it to overtime, try to sneak one. It's tough. But I don't know if that's the strategy or if that was just like how the match ended up or all those type of things. I think Iowa's a really, really tough team. And I think Illinois is kind of in that same kind of tier. I think that we've talked about a little bit with like the majority of the rest of the country, where they got a whole bunch of kind of mid-level guys that are like 5 through 15. And I think Bird's probably their best bet for a national title. And once again, that's not a disrespect to the rest of the team. It's just, I think that
he's the highest ranked guy. Yeah.
I just think that he's proven to all of us that he's very much a contender. So I don't know. I think it's something to continue to monitor. Like when you're looking at the Big Ten, and once again, I think Iowa's just a tough team. I think it was 11th in a row for Brands over Illinois as a dual meet record, or the last 11 they've won. So I think Poeta's got some really good kids. I think he has a pretty good young mix. But to your point, also Mark, Bronigal, world team member in Greco, basically comes in, and Buchanan is, I mean, he's really good. I think he is a huge threat to like winning that national title.
Yeah.
And I think everybody else in the nation kind of knows that Buchanan's that good. I just think that Bronigal just had a little bit more of a struggle with him this time. But hopefully like Bronigal can make it on the award stand. And I think that'd be a really good result for him, because I think those top 4 guys at 97 are pretty talented between, Ferrari, Buchanan, Barr, I'm forgetting
Cardenas.
There we go. But throw in some other guys into those mixes, and then it can be pretty crazy. So
yeah, what's interesting about 97 is one of those guys is going to take third in conference. And, it'll be interesting to see if whoever wins the Big Ten goes undefeated. I would assume they'd get the 1 seed. And if Ferrari goes undefeated out there, Bakersfield could get the 2. But I don't know. We'll see. My general thoughts are this. It's easy to say this because you're not coaching it or doing it. But, like, if you're Illinois, you don't really have a lot to lose. It'd be better to see Cannon Webster lose 4-0, 5-0. It'd be better for him to lose 2-0 and get rode out and be underneath him and figure out how to get better. I think, but the 1-0 thing is tough. You have to win 57 if you're Illinois. Kraser has to beat Estrada. Like, Kraser's your starter. He's a portal guy. He's a guy you think can make noise at nationals. He's got to beat a backup. And Estrada's a backup to Teamer, so it's not like he's a bum, okay? And Estrada will probably be really good, but he's a freshman and he's using his 5 dates. Gabe impressed me. I don't know what happened to Soldier Salute, but whatever it is, it feels like he's okay. And Luke Luffman won without a takedown, got a reversal, but Keeter was in late and close. I don't think you feel great about that if you're Illinois. I think the other thing to just mention to people is all these matches impact Big Ten seeding. The Big Ten basically just seeds off the Big Ten matches, so that's, I think a lot like we did, Mark, with JUCOs. So Penn State, Nebraska, just to go through it, they didn't start at the weight classes, but Luke beats Caleb Smith, 1 takedown to none late. Van D upsets Braden Davis. Bo Bartlett wins a barn burner over Hardy. Ridge Lovett, probably the surprise of the evening. Not that he won, although that was, depending on who you picked, a surprise, but that he majored Shane Van Ness. Kasak gets a 7-point move early and beats Antrell Taylor. Messenbrink gets a tech. Levi Haynes gets a 9-2 decision, 7-point decision. Starachi gets a major. Barr gets a tech. Kirkfleet gets a tech. We do those dual picks. I actually picked this duel. I won the duel. The one thing that probably helped me is I picked Van D over Davis. I picked Luke over Caleb Smith, but I was wrong about Van Ness. I got 9 of the 10 picks right. And 49 is interesting now, guys. Like, I think we thought Van Ness was like the dude to beat. Mark, I know you kind of felt that way. Like, you're right about Barr, and you may end up being right about Van Ness, but this is kind of at least a glitch in the matrix, so to speak. Luke doesn't really wrestle anybody else in the top 10 the rest of the year. It's a sort of a statistical anomaly. Like the one year John Morrison didn't really wrestle anybody in the top 10 on Oklahoma State's schedule. Like, sometimes it's almost impossible to think that, like, Josh Barr is going to wrestle everybody good, but so Penn State showed a little bit of vulnerability, but it's weird because, like, Van Ness will drop a couple spots in the rankings, which we'll talk about. Braden Davis drops couple spots in the rankings, maybe more. We'll have to look and see. But Luke goes from out of that top 8 to probably 4 or 5. And so team point wise, they're probably pretty close to the same. And I think their entire team will be ranked in the top 8 in the country. And so now we're in that conversation of, can they be the second team to have 10 AAs? And if they do, they're probably going to have at least one national champ, I would bet. And so, historically, that makes them better than the Minnesota team. So Mark, as the wise and senior member of our panel here, maybe the thoughts on the duel or Penn State, and we kind of want to go relatively quick here because I think we want to try to pick a duel.
Yeah. The duel was, 157 on up. I kind of expected everything I saw. The first 4 weights was a little different, obviously, but we had talked about Van Diest being good. I thought I put him in that conversation to be an All-American. I think I picked him to be an All-American because he beat some really good kids last year. He didn't care who he wrestles. He just wants to wrestle. So I like him. I picked Luke to win it all. I think, being a world champion, he came in with such a pedigree, and he just doesn't give up points. He's just really stingy, and he can score when he wants to. He had a couple opportunities to score. He was doing all the work, so I like that. But, yeah, overall, I thought it was a great duel. I think Nebraska fought really hard, but they were at home. I wouldn't expect anything less from a Mark Manning team. So,
Massive crowd there for that meet, a massive crowd for the Oklahoma-West Virginia meet.
yeah.
GT, anything about that duel before we fly through the rankings and then try to pick a duel or two, or am I okay to just keep it moving?
Yeah, just keep it moving, boys. I mean, I think.
Okay, jump in when you want. 125, the major move here. Luke Lillidow moves from 12 to 4. Our guy Christian Thompson put these together. Intermat didn't come out till like 15 minutes before we did the show, so they're not included this week. Strickenberger gets a huge wins by fall over Spratley, but Spratley has other good wins that his Cliff Keen keeps him where he is above Caleb Smith and Ventresca. But again, Luke Lillidow went from being 12 to 4, significant in the team points. 33, Braden Davis didn't really drop. That's kind of interesting. He was 7th to 8th. Van D goes from 10 to 13. Cale Hughes comes in the lineup. Be interesting to see because he pinned Arini last week. He needed overtime, though, to beat West Virginia. West Virginia, speaking of teams that fought really hard, wrestled hard. They got 3 wins against Oklahoma State, lost an overtime match, and had 197 on the ropes. 41, no significant changes at all. 149. So it's now Henson, Lovett, Van Ness, Parco. Panero's up to 6. So that's interesting. Lachlan McNeil's 5. So Caleb Henson, Lachlan McNeil probably in the ACC championship. Parco will wrestle Van Ness and Lovett in the regular season. That'll determine the seeds of the Big Ten. You really want to be the 1 seed there. You'd rather wrestle Dylan D'Amelio than any of those other 2 guys. So Van Ness drops a spot. 57. Cody Chittum took a loss to Charlie Millard from Minnesota. So deservedly so, they put him behind the starter from Minnesota, which I think is awfully fair. 65. Mantanona got a win against Sparks. So he moves up. Sparks moves down. And he did a good job of controlling that match. Probably the other thing here is Patty Gallagher is now going 65. Sasso's down to 57. So that's significant, especially when we talk about some of these duels coming up. 74, no change. 84. Dil Senor from Little Rock took a loss, so he drops 4 spots, but really doesn't change his points. 97, super chalky. Heavyweight. So they did get Gadiali out of here. Gable Stevenson's from another planet. He wrestled Heinzelman, who's actually really pretty good, and just took him down, cradled him up, smiled at the crowd, stuck his tongue out, and then pinned him. It's almost stupid how good he is. Gadiali coming out helps really helps like kind of Feldman on down. They all kind of bump up a spot. Really helps Illinois if they bump from 9 to 8 because, now you're going from those 2 to 5.5 team points on the projections. So let me pull up the schedule this week. Friday is Nebraska, Michigan. Oklahoma State, Northern Iowa, which is a way better duel than I think we thought it would have been in September or October. Saturday is Ohio State, Iowa. Sunday, Illinois, Rutgers, and Oklahoma State at Iowa State. So Oklahoma State and OU are both doing that travel to Iowa weekend. Do we want to pick? I kind of want to pick Oklahoma State, Northern Iowa, and Ohio State, Iowa. What do you think, boys?
Sure.
Which one you guys want to do first?
Well, let's do the first duel, which would be Oklahoma State, UNI. That's
All right.
Friday night, correct?
It is.
Iowa wrestles Saturday, and then Oklahoma State wrestles Sunday against, I'm guessing, Iowa State.
They do. GT is going to be at that meet. This is the rumor. Okay. All right.
I may make an appearance.
Probably getting an award for being probably one of the greatest division NAIA coaches in the history of the sport.
Ambassador for the sport, magnificent facial hair.
God, they look good on Iowa public television.
Yeah, huge
got some
shout out to that
absolute
coming back.
beast on your team.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no doubt. All right. So here are the matchups for people if you're only listening. Spratley versus Anderson, Cale User, Woodcraft versus Farber, Tegan Jamison, Cale Happel's a premier matchup. Carter Young versus Real Budo, Caleb Fish versus Downey, Cam Amin versus Thompson, Dean Hamady versus Sima, Plott versus Keckheisen, Serber versus Volker, Hendrickson versus Runyon. I'll just say this on paper. Oklahoma State, pretty significant favorites at 74. And heavyweight, Northern Iowa, as good as Plott is a significant favorite at 84. All right, we'll just do this in order. You guys can see this. Mark, 25, who you got?
Spratley by decision.
GT.
I'll take Spratley by decision.
I'll go the same. GT 33, and they may do Cale Hughes or Woodcraft for one of these matches and the other one against Frost. So that's interesting. This is 13 or 21, so kind of 17 versus 18. So kind of a toss-up-y match. Who you got?
I'll take probably Reese Whitcraft over Farber by decision.
I will take the same thing. Mark?
I like Farber. He's one tough little kid, man. He's built like a, you know what, brick house. I'm gonna take Farber by decision.
Okay. 41, Happel Jamison, 4 versus 5. I'm gonna pick Happel at home. Mark?
Apple at home.
GT.
I'm gonna take Jameson by decision.
Okay. 49, this is number 14 against number 13, Carter Young, Colin Real Budo. Mark?
Rio Budo.
GT.
I'm gonna take Colin
Me
by
too.
decision.
Yep. Not a lot of bonus so far. 57, Caleb Fish, ranked number 13. Ryder Downey, ranked number 4. Grant, who you got?
I'm gonna take Ryder Downey by decision.
I will as well. Mark?
Oh, could he major him? Probably not. Downey by decision.
Okay, 65, Amin Thompson. I'll take Amin by decision. Mark?
Same.
GT.
I'm gonna take the upset Jack Thompson over Cam Amin by decision.
Okay. 74, Mark Hamady versus Sima.
Hamley by major.
GT.
Take Hamady by decision.
I'll go major Hamady. 84, GT, Keckheisen Plott.
I'll take Plott. Oh, take that back. Keckheisen by decision.
I'll take Keckheisen by like a 6 or 7 point decision. I think Plott holds him off though.
Can I pick this one?
Yeah.
I'm going to take Keckheisen by major.
Mark, we're getting to you. It's just the order.
He opens it up. He opens it up, David.
Okay, here we go. This
Have
is a huge match. Serber and Volker are 1-1. Volker won the last one. Serber's ranked 7. Volker's ranked 11. Mark?
Volker by decision. Iowa boy.
GT.
I'll take Serber by decision.
I'm going to pick Volker at home. Okay. Heavyweight. No, actually, I think I was supposed to go first there, so I'll go first on this one. Hendrickson versus Runyon. I'm going to say Hendrickson by fall. Mark,
Henderson by Paul.
GT.
Say Hendrickson by Tech.
Okay, so Mark's got it 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4 matches for Oklahoma State, 12 plus bonus points, 16 for Oklahoma State. And he's got Northern Iowa. He's got it 16-16. But he's got it UNI winning 6 matches to 4. 3, 6, 9, 12. No, I'm sorry. 15, 19. He's got a 19-16 UNI. GT, you have Oklahoma State winning 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 plus 2 bonus. So you have it 20. And then you have 20-12 Oklahoma State. I have it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I have it 5-5 with Oklahoma State getting 4 bonus points. I have it 19-15 Oklahoma State. That is fascinating. Okay. Let's look at, I think this tool is really interesting too. Ohio State against Iowa.
At Iowa.
Is it at, I was just going to look that up. Is it at Iowa?
It's at Iowa.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep. Okay. So here are the matchups. Macron versus Cruz, Buzakis versus Ayala, Mendez versus Block, D'Amelio versus Parco, Sasso versus Teamer or Estrada, Gallagher versus Caliendo, Karchla, Kennedy, Rogatsky, Arnold, Shoemate, Buchanan, Feldman, Keeter. Gavin Hoffman's at Lockhaven now, so we'll have to tell them that that's been moved. Okay, let me get this written down real quick. By the way, it's very interesting to me that the other duel, Mark, you got the upset. I mean, we all have this 6-4, 4-6, or 5. I mean, I think I have it 5-5, and you guys each have it the other way. So to me, it's a way closer duel than I would have thought at the beginning of the year. Maybe I'm the only one that looks at it that way, and you guys are all smarter than me, but that's kind of how I look at it. All right, Mark, we'll do the same thing. You start at 25, Macron and Cruz.
I got to go Macron by decision.
Okay, GT.
Take Macron by major.
And I'm going to agree with GT. I think he's a Turner. I think he could actually get a pin. He's good with those cradles. Okay, Buzakis, Ayala, GT.
We'll take Ayala by a major.
I'm going to take Ayala by decision.
Well, I'm going to take Ayala by decision. Major and Nick is tough to do, I would imagine.
Okay, Mendez versus Block. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say Mendez by Tech. Mark?
You're going way out on a limb there. I got to go Mendez by a Tech also.
Oh, you know, okay. All right. I thought that was crazy. I thought most people would pick major, but go ahead, Grant.
I'll take a step back and go to a major decision by Mendez.
There we go. I think, okay. D'Amelio, Parco. So that is you, Mark, going first.
Parco by decision.
GT.
I'll take Parco by decision.
Same here. 57. So Sasso.
It's not going to be Teamer, so we know that.
Okay, so and Estrada's used 5 dates. We don't know that it's not Teamer, Mark.
You think he's ready?
Well, he's posting stuff like he's coming back soon.
Okay.
Let's pick it both ways. Like we'll pick Sasso versus Teamer and then Sasso against somebody else. So GT, you're first on this. If he wrestles Teamer, who do you got?
I take Teamer by major if he wrestles.
Okay.
And if it's not Teamer, then I would probably take Sasso by decision against whoever they throw out.
Okay. I'm going to go Teamer decision or Sasso decision.
Same here.
Okay.
Same here.
All right. So when we add these up, we'll add them up without 157, and that'll be interesting. Okay, 65. Patty Gallagher, Caliendo. I'm first here. Again, I'm going to take Caliendo by major. Mark?
That sounds real reasonable. I'm going to go major for Caliendo also.
GT?
Take Caliendo by decision.
Okay. 74. All right. This is a great match. Karchla and Kennedy.
Great match.
Great match. Okay, who you got?
I got Kennedy by decision.
Okay.
He's wrestling as good as anybody on the team right now.
No arguing there. GT?
Take Kennedy by decision.
All right. I'll take Karchla. 84, Ryder Rogotsky, Gabe Arnold. GT, you're first.
Take Gabe Arnold by decision.
Same here. Mark.
Same here.
All right. 97, Buchanan, Shoemate. I'll go Buchanan, Major. Mark.
Same.
I'll go
GT.
Buchanan Major.
Okay. Heavyweight, Feldman, Keeter. Mark.
Oh, Ben Keeter. Jiminy Christmas. He's not going to be happy with his last performance. I'm going to take Ben Keeter by decision, upset.
Grant.
Take
Why are
Feldman
you
by
laughing,
decision.
David? David, you're chuckling. I don't like it.
Just your Iowa Mark. I love you. Grant.
I'll take Feldman by decision.
I got Feldman by decision. All right. So we're going to add these up without 157. So Mark's got Ohio State winning only 2 matches. So he's got them with 6 plus 2 is 8 points. Iowa winning obviously 7 matches times 3 is 21 plus 2 bonus. So he's got a 23-8 plus 157. So you don't have this as much of a duel. GT has 1, 2, 3 wins for Ohio State with 1 bonus or 2 bonus points. So that's 11. That gives Iowa 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times 3 is 18 plus 2 bonus. So he's got a 20-11. I've got Ohio State winning 1, 2, 3, 4 matches plus a tech and a major. So that's 15. And Iowa's winning 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plus 2, 17, 15 plus 157. So I have Ohio State, which I don't feel great about winning this duel if Sasso doesn't wrestle Teamer. But I don't think I'm crazy. I mean, I think 25 they're favored, 41 they're favored, 57 they're favored. I think heavyweight they're favored. And then Mark, you and I said this off the air, like they need to find one more win, and I'm picking it at 74, which I think is not a crazy pick.
No, I think no, it's not crazy. To me, is the way Kennedy's wrestling right now and at Iowa, I just think it's a tough win for Karchla, and I really think Karchla is going to be an All-American for Ohio State this year. I just think Kennedy's wrestling really, really well, and he's not going to probably get underneath them and get front headlocked, and it's going to be different. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we set a point spread on this, and maybe you and I will do that before the weekend, if I'm setting it, Kennedy's the favorite. Like, there's no way I'm giving Kennedy points at home. That's absurd. Okay, but that doesn't mean – I feel like it's a 1 or 2 exchange match. I think Kennedy's better on top than Karchla is on top, but I don't know if he's a point better, or like a riding time point better, what I mean by that.
Well, that's kind of what he did at the Illinois duel, though. He just took everything out of Bronigal and rode him like a dog for almost 3 minutes. And that took a lot of wind out of Bronigal. And if he can do that to Karchla, get a takedown and ride him out and wear him down, it's going to be hard for Karchla to come back. But I do guarantee this. Ohio State will score more than 1 takedown against Iowa. I will take the over on that one.
That's an interesting of course, I agree with that. What's interesting would be what would the takedown bet be, right? Because it's probably 1 or 2 for Macron, probably 3 or 4 for Mendez, at least 1 for Feldman. Like, if I said 10 takedowns,
I'd take the under.
okay, maybe we'll make that side bet too.
Grant, what do you think?
I'll take the over on that.
You think Ohio State?
All right, I'll set the line. That's the bet. 10 takedowns over.
You think Ohio State takes Iowa down more than 10 times?
Yeah.
Wow. Mendez can get 5 by himself.
Yeah, I mean, like, we're talking about the over here. I mean, that's like if Macron decides that he wants to get 2, Mendez can get probably 2. It depends on if Teamer wrestles, but Sasso could probably get at least one. Harchlove versus Kennedy is going to be a hand fight battle, but I think both those guys get a takedown.
Yeah.
I mean, I think also Ryder Rogotsky, he could just choose down and like neck wrench somebody, so that counts as one.
Does not count as a takedown.
Oh, it counts as one. And I think also Feldman Cuter could be, because they're both very athletic heavyweights. They could have, one or two each there. I mean, once again, I don't think it's necessarily too crazy. I think the outlier is what you guys have discussed with Illinois only getting one. I think that's bananas.
Don't let it be 10 on the head, because I'm going to be obnoxious.
But they didn't shoot. That's the problem. I think Ohio State's going to actually take shots. Illinois did not take legitimate shots at all, even their best kids.
So a lot of these are match scripts too, right? Like if Macron's up 6, then he cuts him and tries to get one, which can end up with an extra takedown, right? But if he's up 7 plus riding time, he doesn't. And how you get there can get a lot of different ways, like a difference between 2 swipes and 4 swipes, right? So I think Mendez will get to Block's legs all day. And I think if Block doesn't go to his back, they're going to make Mendez earn it. I think 4 or 5 takedowns are not out of the question there. So it'll be interesting. All right, Marco, give me a call later this week. We'll make our picks. GT, enjoy the trip Sunday. It should be a lot of fun up there. Gilman's got that exhibition match against the Cuban. Hopefully there's some way to watch it, or else maybe you could Facebook Live it or just do something that's not a copyright infringement. And we would love to see that. And
we're going to pick the winner of that match?
I don't know enough to know. I mean, I'm going to pick Gilman.
Okay.
I mean, who's going to – yeah, I mean, like USA, right? So, All right. I want to thank everybody for watching and listening, and we will see you all next week.